Hello, this is Mark Soden. I'm here with Derek Monypeny, and we are doing an interview prior to his performing January 7th at Furstworld in Joshua Tree. Hello, Derek.
Hi, Mark. My name's Derek Monypeny, and I am currently in unincorporated Yucca Valley
All
up on the
right.
mesa.
What led you to experiment with noise or music as sound?
I was thinking about this, and I would say, I grew up in Yuma, Arizona. Uh, Not a lot of culture happening there, but I started getting interested in sound and kind of heavier rock music when I was 13 or 14. And I think some of the extraneous type of sounds, like hearing Jimi Hendrix with feedback, things like that, I started to be drawn to some of the things that were outside of the structure, maybe, or what things were supposed to be going on. And that kind of led me to getting into kind of indie rock and punk music. And then I think probably when I was 17 or so, I heard Sonic Youth. Um, and that was a very big gateway for me and a lot of people in terms of, when you think about it, they didn't do anything that necessarily innovative or crazy. They just used different tunings to play rock music, and they incorporated noise and feedback and manipulated. They kind of did prepared guitar, so putting things in between like drumsticks and the strings to create percussive sounds. And within kind of, by the time I heard them, kind of typical rock structures, with like a regular rock drummer and vocals and things like that. And then in 1988, I think I actually saw them live. I was 21. That was in Los Angeles. And that was probably the first kind of, because they did a very weird set. They didn't play any of the music that I was familiar with. They were playing stuff from an album that hadn't been released yet. And they had these crazy improvised passages where it really was pure noise. So that was a big formative experience for me. And that was led me on a path that to some extent I'm still on. So that was a big one. And then from 1998 to 2010, I lived in Oakland, California, and which really was, and in some sense still is, kind of a hotbed of harsh noise, electronic stuff. I mean, I think of Grux, who is the founder of Carolina Rainbow and also does Rubber O Cement, all kinds of stuff. I think of him as one of the real founding prominent figures of what we call noise. And, he's been based in San Francisco forever. So seeing Carolina, seeing some of the stuff Grux was doing, and then another thing that Grux did and still does is he has pretty much a weekly, he calls it noise pancakes. So they have a Sunday, it's every Sunday right around this time of day. They're probably doing it right now. They have shows that have, it's all noise. It's like they serve pancakes and waffles sometimes, actually. So they have a place. It's been in different places in SF. I think it's now at the Lab in San Francisco. And that's just something that he's been doing every week after week, year after year, and brings different people in. There's also in the Bay, you have, Mills College is now it's going to, well, it was just announced pretty recently that they're going to be closing, but it's a college that's been around since the 30s and 40s, I think, and it has you can get a degree in experimental music there. They've had tons of amazing people that have been in their faculty: Fred Frith, Roscoe Mitchell, Pauline Oliveros, and that's in Oakland. And people who go to Mills College a lot of time end up staying. So you get these brilliant people who are into noise and experimental music that are just in the culture there too. So I would say that really getting into noise was my time in Oakland, really kind of gave me a big education on it.
Do you have a piece of gear that you are going to use for the show at Furstworld that you find inspiring and would like to tell us about?
Sure. I actually have it here right in my lap. I'm going to try to display it on the screen here. This is an Indian instrument that I got. I didn't get it in India, but it was ordered and I got it online. So it came directly from India. This is the part where you strum it. So there's about 16 strings total. There are 12. The thin strings you see at the top here are the sympathetic strings, just like what a sitar has. And then down below, you have the strings that are affected by these keys that you see. So there's black and white keys that are like a piano. Um, so what I do is strum it, or I tune it to a chord, and I'll just strum it. I don't know if it'll be picked up over the mic, but so that's so that's me strumming the lower strings. The sympathetic strings sound like this. Now, need to tune one of them, obviously. And then as I press the keys, you'll hear what that sounds like if it comes over. So the underlying drone is going. So I'm not sure how much that came across, but that's just a little sample. And this is, it has a pickup. It's an electric instrument. So I plug it in and I use a fix with it. To some degree, I play it traditionally, more or less, like you just heard a little bit, and then I will also do some things where I don't strum at all and I tap on the strings, and it kind of creates sounds. Actually, someone pointed this out, and it's totally true. It does kind of sound like an analog synth if you have delay going, or I use phaser with it a lot, and heavy delay and reverb. And you can get, as when I do this kind of tapping technique with it, it becomes kind of like something you would hear from a German guy in the 70s, kind of that analog kind of pre, during, and post Kraftwerk kind of stuff. There's certain people that I'm, like Asherah Temple, things like that. Klaus Schultz kind of gets in that realm. So I tend to, I'll sometimes have a point in my set where I switch just to that. And I did release a record earlier this year that has a long piece where I'm doing that kind of tapping that gives that kind of synthesizer-esque vibe to it. So it's been a great instrument for me, and I'm still kind of finding new things to do with it. And for this show, I will definitely be playing it.
Thank you. That's really an amazing tool. That's stunning. What is the noise scene like in your area?
Well, maybe you would have more knowledge about that than me. I do know, so I have seen some of the I've seen your band, Mark, and I've seen some of the stuff at the old, now gone apparently, Landers Brew, some of the showcases that you did with some local people. I've gotten to know Jakob Bean a little bit, who does Brutal Poodle. I saw her, and then later on I've kind of gotten to know her. So there's a few people that I'm familiar with. I really like her a lot. For myself, I kind of feel like I'm in my early 50s, that my kind of interest and participation in scenes is maybe behind me to some extent. I do work kind of in isolation a lot. So I know that there are people doing experimental music and noise music, and we had, this isn't some outside people doing this, but there was the High Desert Soundings Festival that I actually participated in last month. That was out at the Palms, and people came. A lot of LA people came out. People from Arizona that I got to meet out there. There was a couple of people from the Pacific Northwest that came. So I did play as part of that. But as far as what's going on here, I know that you have a lot to do with it, but I haven't, other than seeing you guys do some of the shows you've put on a couple of times, I haven't got super deep into it.
So, how do you approach improvising in a noise context?
That's a good question. For the past few years, as a solo, I've been in bands and when I was lived in different places, and I've moved. My partner and I moved to Yucca Valley about 4 years ago, and ever since then, I have played solo. I haven't joined any other projects that were of any kind of official capacity, and I feel like being a solo musician is how I'll probably ride out the rest, unless some people that are really amazing want me to join their band, which I guess could happen. So I've been able to kind of structure my sets when I play exactly the way that I want to. And something kind of holds me back from doing an entirely improvised set, mainly because I've seen a lot of them that seemed kind of self-indulgent and didn't work. And, there's always that potential. Of course, there's always a potential for something really amazing to happen as well. So, and I don't ever want to entirely get rid of having an improvisational element to what I do. So what I tend to do is set things up where there is a structured piece, and then but there will be passages that I haven't worked out. So in like a 30 or 40-minute set, there will be probably a good 10, at least 10 minutes of it, where there's a section where I'm going to go from here and I'm going to get to this other place that I know. But in between there, I might have some thought about, sometimes it's just what effect I want to use at that point. But there isn't like, I don't think about how long it's going to be, and I don't think about what notes that there aren't, so it's improvised, I think, by most definitions of improvisation. But I like to put an overlying structure around it. And sometimes people will I think a lot of times people probably think I'm improvising the whole thing, because my structured songs sometimes don't come off as such, but I know where it's going to go and what what it is structured. It's worked out ahead of time, and I'm playing things in a certain way. So, but I usually leave a chunk to where, more recently, there's just been a certain type of effect that I'm using with the Shahi Baja that I never did before. And what I'll probably do, the show that I'm doing on January 7th is part of a West Coast tour that I'm going on. So what I'm thinking will probably happen during the course of the shows that I'm playing every night, which will be, I think, about 7 or 8 shows. It's a little over a week. Then these passages that are now really open will probably, if I start feeling like it's working, then it'll probably become something that isn't improvised anymore, or it's something that it's a thing that I know I can go to, that I feel like it works. But there's always some section where it's open.
Okay, thank you. And I had another question, but I think that you covered it. I was going to ask you, how do you prepare for performance? And that sounds like you described how you prepare for performance. So I think we're good there. Is there anything else you'd like to add to the interview?
Maybe just that. So I'm from Arizona. I've been inspired by a lot of the music that was happening when I was growing up that came out of Arizona. A lot of people have probably heard of the Meat Puppets, but there was like the Sun City Girls, who were a huge influence on me, who also would definitely dabble into pure noise at times. So some of the weird stuff that came from Arizona has been really influential on me, and just especially since coming out, I lived in Oakland. I also lived in the Northwest for a bit. But coming back to a desert, which is where I grew up. I grew up in Yuma, Arizona, which is a different type of desert than the high desert, but it's definitely a desert environment. There's road runners running around and a lot of the things you see here. And coming back here has really gotten me to feeling sort of my roots as someone who's from the desert, and my music reflects that, I think. But it's also gotten me connected back to Arizona again. So that's a long-winded way of saying that one of the bands that's playing with me on January 7th is also a band that I'm touring with, and they are from Phoenix, Arizona. And they're called Sunn Trio, Sunn Trio. And I'm excited for people to hear them. They're young guys, so they're kind of, I think that I would count as millennials. They're in their 30s, and a couple of them are in their late 20s, but they have, to me, I hear the tradition of the kind of weird desert Arizona music that uh, is where I come from and what my roots are. And these guys totally get it. And they've put a couple records out. They have toured in Europe a little bit, but they haven't, some of these places they're playing, it'll be for the first time. So definitely they've never played out here before. So I'm excited for everybody to hear them.
Very good. Well, thank you very much. This is Mark Soden. I'm here interviewing Derek Monypeny. He will be performing January 7th at Furstworld in Joshua Tree. And thank you again, Derek. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you very much, Mark. Thanks for setting this up.